Good to have you with us. This is ARIRANG News. It's 4 p.m. here in Seoul, and I'm Laah Hyun-kyung. We begin with the bitter and more than decade-long standoff between the West and Iran over Tehran's nuclear program, which could soon be reaching an end. Iran and the six world powers, including the U.S. and China, agreed to a framework for a deal to curb Iran's nuclear development in return for the lifting of international sanctions. Our Choi You-sun starts us off.
After 8 days of marathon negotiations in Switzerland, Iran and the so-called P5+1 nations agreed to a framework for a deal to curb Tehran's nuclear development program. It's not a final deal, but a significant step towards extending the time it would take Iran to build a nuclear weapon by at least 10 years.
Iran will be able to continue its peaceful nuclear program, but there will be limitations placed on the level and the duration of its enrichment program and the quantity of enriched material that can be kept.
Under the framework, Tehran has agreed to suspend 2/3 of its centrifuges that can be used to produce weapons-grade uranium. It will also dismantle a plutonium-producing reactor and allow international inspectors to monitor all of its nuclear facilities on a regular basis. The U.S. and the European Union's economic and financial sanctions concerning Tehran's nuclear activities will be lifted in phases, but will be reinforced if Tehran breaks its commitments. Iran and the 5 UN Security Council permanent members plus Germany are now tasked with reaching a final agreement by June 30th, after which international sanctions relief will start.
And I am convinced that if this framework leads to a final comprehensive deal, it will make our country, our allies, and our world safer.
While the West and the UN chief welcomed the news, Israel, a strong opponent of Iran's nuclear program, said any deal must significantly roll back Iran's nuclear capabilities. The leaders of the U.S. and Iran face another hurdle at home, as the final agreement is viewed with skepticism by many lawmakers in Washington and Tehran. Choi You-sun, ARIRANG News.
Well, this nuclear deal with Iran would have been unthinkable even a few years ago, so there's renewed optimism that a similar agreement could be reached with North Korea. But experts in the U.S. say chances are very slim at the moment. Park Ji-won tells us more.
Former U.S. nuclear negotiator Robert Gallucci, who led the 1994 Geneva Agreement with North Korea, says it's unlikely the U.S. will engage in more nuclear discussions with Pyongyang in the near future. He said the Obama administration will need to focus on persuading the Republican-led Congress to approve the nuclear framework deal with Iran. His view is widely shared with North Korea experts in the U.S. Joel Witt, a founder and editor at 38 North, a website specializing in North Korea matters, also said he doesn't expect the Obama administration to refocus its attention on Pyongyang anytime soon. Witt says the U.S. has a lot more to do to implement the Iranian deal, such as bolstering its security ties with Israel. And since there are a lot of critics of the Iran deal on the grounds that the U.S. wasted years attempting to convince North Korea to denuclearize, experts say Washington will be reluctant to re-engage with Pyongyang for the time being. Despite bilateral and multilateral negotiations stretching back to the 1990s, North Korea has continuously strengthened its nuclear capabilities, conducting 3 nuclear tests between 2006 and 2013. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
Despite the deemed prospects of a U.S. push on Pyongyang's nuclear disarmament, the top nuclear envoys from the U.S. and Russia did meet in Moscow on Thursday for discussions on the long-stalled 6-party talks on North Korea's denuclearization. Russia's foreign ministry said Sung Kim and Igor Morgulov talked about ways to restart the multilateral dialogue. Russia says it wants to get back to the negotiating table to ease political and military tensions on the Korean Peninsula, with the U.S. focused on firming up the Iranian nuclear deal that may be unlikely. The Russian ministry, however, gave no further details on the closed-door meeting. This was Sung Kim's first visit to Russia and his first meeting with a high-ranking Russian official since he became U.S. Special Representative for North Korea policy in November last year. And while speculation continues over the possible deployment of the U.S. defense system known as THAAD, it's looking very likely that Korea will be beefing up its own defense capabilities by buying hundreds of advanced missiles from the U.S. Connie Kim has the details.
The U.S. State Department has approved the possible sale of 400 air-to-surface Hellfire missiles as well as related equipment to South Korea. Seoul had requested semi-active laser missiles, air training missiles, and captive air training missiles. It is now waiting for the U.S. Congress to approve the purchase. The advanced weaponry will improve South Korea's ability to defend itself against North Korea. These new weapons, coming at a price tag of $81 million, will be used on Apache helicopters, and 36 of which are expected to arrive in South Korea next year. Hellfire missiles are mainly used to target tanks and armored vehicles. It's estimated that Pyongyang possesses about 3,800 tanks, while Seoul has some 2,400. What's more, experts say the Hellfire missiles are also capable of destroying North Korean underground tunnels located on the truce line between the two countries. And inside the tunnels, Pyongyang is estimated to have some 3.4 million long-range artillery projectiles aimed at the southern part of the peninsula. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
Things are not looking good at the joint inter-Korean Kaesong factory zone, with both Koreas not budging on the wage issue. Pyongyang wants pay increased for North Korean workers, but Seoul is firm on its stance that the matter needs to be settled through dialogue. ARIRANG's Unification Ministry correspondent Hwang Sung-hee has the story.
Reiterating that the wage hike for workers at the Kaesong industrial complex must be settled through dialogue, South Korea's Unification Ministry said Friday it will push for talks with North Korea next week.
Since April 10th is the payday, we are trying to arrange a meeting between the Kaesong Industrial District Management Committee and the North Korean government.
North Korea wants the workers' monthly wage raised from around $70 to $74, which exceeds the current 5% salary cap. Pyongyang wants the salary hike to apply to March wages, which would be paid out April 10th. On Thursday, the South Korean government asked companies at the joint business park for a wage freeze until a deal is reached between the two Koreas. The Unification Ministry reassured that the firms will be compensated for any potential damage to their business operations.
For any companies that are affected by following the government's wage guideline, we will review all cases and come up with a measure to minimize the damage, including the distribution of insurance payments.
The Kaesong industrial complex, where more than 54,000 North Koreans work at around 124 South Korean companies, is the last remaining form of inter-Korean cooperation. The latest tug-of-war between the Koreas is raising concerns about another unilateral shutdown of the complex by Pyongyang. But most experts say such a scenario is unlikely, since maintaining the joint business park is just as important to the north as it is to the south. Hwang Sung-hee, ARIRANG News.
North Korea, in the meantime, has slammed the Japanese government for police raids on a pro-Pyongyang group in Tokyo in connection with an investigation into the country's past abductions of Japanese nationals. North Korea says moves like this make the prospect of bilateral talks impossible. Kwon So-ah reports.
Pyongyang isn't happy about the way Japan is investigating North Korea's abduction of Japanese nationals in the 1970s and 80s. The North State-run Korean Central News Agency reported Thursday that Pyongyang sent a letter to Japan denouncing raids on the General Association of Korean Residents in Japan, a pro-North Korean body that functions as the de facto North Korean embassy in Tokyo. Pyongyang called it a severely political provocation and an infringement of Pyongyang's sovereignty, and is not only seeking an explanation, but also an apology. The North Korean regime also accused Japan of, quote, playing up the abduction issue internationally. Last year, Japan and the EU submitted a draft resolution to the UN against North Korea's human rights abuses, including the matter of abductees. Relations between the two countries appear to be souring. This latest complaint comes less than a year after Pyongyang and Tokyo both agreed on investigations into the abduction issue at a meeting in Stockholm. Tokyo had lifted some sanctions in return for the probe, but so far North Korea hasn't delivered any results. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
U.S. Democratic Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi, who's currently leading a bipartisan congressional delegation to several Asian nations, says the Japanese leader needs to show sincere remorse over Japan's past wartime atrocities. Our Ji Myung-gil has more.
Nancy Pelosi called for Prime Minister Shinzo Abe to apologize for the Japanese military's coercion of young Korean and other Asian women into sexual slavery during World War II.
We have been clear about what we'd like to hear about comfort women. Whether the Prime Minister does that in that speech or not, I hope that a statement will be made.
It's an issue that Seoul has repeatedly pressed on Tokyo. During talks earlier with President Park Geun-hye, Pelosi expressed sympathy over the matter, saying it's a women's rights issue that should be solved. President Park pushed its urgency as the last surviving Korean victims are in their late 80s. Korea hopes to help U.S. lawmakers better understand the issue of Japan's wartime wrongdoings ahead of Abe's address to a joint session of the U.S. Congress. Diplomatic relations between Korea and Japan have been very tense, with the Abe administration reluctant to clearly acknowledge Japan's past. Seoul had criticized Abe for attempting to shift the blame for the forcible recruitment of the so-called comfort women to private brokers, denying the Japanese government's involvement. Pelosi and the other 9 members of Congress will head to Japan on Friday. Ji Myung-gil, ARIRANG News.
And Korean Foreign Minister Byungse also reportedly told Nancy Pelosi that the Japanese Prime Minister should specifically refer to Tokyo's past acknowledgement of its wartime sexual enslavement in his upcoming U.S. congressional speech. Seoul's foreign ministry said Yoon asked for Washington's support on the matter during his closed-door meeting with Pelosi so that Abe's speech can send a positive message to Korea and other countries that were affected by Japan's imperialistic atrocities. It's the first time the Korean minister used direct expressions such as Japan's, quote, past aggressions, colonial rule, and comfort women issue in regards to Abe's speech. Pelosi, however, is reported to have maintained the stance that the inclusions are up to the Japanese leader. Korea's foreign exchange reserves rose for the second straight month in March. The Bank of Korea says reserves came in at around 380 or 60 billion US dollars rather as of the end of last month, up $380 million from February. The central bank attributes the increase to a rise in investment profits that offset a drop in the value of euro-dominated assets. The euro slumped over 3% against the greenback last month. Korea has the 7th largest foreign reserves in the world, following countries including China, Japan, and Switzerland. A market researcher is predicting that Samsung Electronics' newest Galaxy S6 series smartphones will be record-breaking bestsellers for the Korean tech giant. Hong Kong-based Counterpoint Research says Samsung is expected to sell over 50 million combined units of the new smartphones this year, surpassing the record set by the Galaxy S4, which sold about 45 million units the year it was released. New features like wireless charging batteries, a first for the industry, are projected to help Samsung win back its share in high-end smartphone market. However, the researcher said the boost will come at the expense of other Android competitors rather than Apple. Despite its market share edging down, Samsung retained its #1 spot with a 28% share last year, but Apple outperformed Samsung in the fourth quarter. Now, today is an exciting day for many car lovers out there. The Seoul Motor Show kicked off this Friday. Automakers from around the world are rolling out new models and concept cars. Now, for a peek into this event and the cars that are creating the buzz, here's ARIRANG's Kim Min-ji.
Flashy and sleek take center stage at this year's Seoul Motor Show with major brands pulling out all the stops. Under the theme Experience the Technology, Feel the Artistry, automakers are showcasing models that fuse cutting-edge trends with sophisticated designs. EM Motors pulled the curtain back on its much-anticipated revamped K5. The sedan is equipped with state-of-the-art tech, offering a safe drive and chic design that can appeal to drivers of all ages.
Cars are no longer limited to just the driving experience. It's a part of our everyday lives. Our focus was to make the car a part of the driver's lifestyle and culture.
Foreign brands are also making a big showing. Mini used the occasion to showcase its Mini Superleggera vision concept. It's gained attention for its roadster shape, unique styling, and classic interior. And riding on the environmentally friendly trend, a majority of local and foreign brands have also included green cars in their showcase lineup. BMW's i8 plug-in hybrid sports car made its local debut. The German car maker says it's a glimpse into the future and has even taken into consideration Korea's lack of infrastructure for such vehicles.
We've installed 120 charging facilities at supermarkets across the nation for customers to use.
More than 300 vehicles are on site, but if the showroom isn't enough, there's also a variety of hands-on activities visitors can check out, including driving simulations. The motor show runs through April 12th. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
Bringing you the fresh updates from stories breaking in Korea and abroad. We give you a bigger and better picture of the world. Join Laah Hyun-kyung live from Seoul. Every weekday, only on ARIRANG.
It was a day of complete horror in Kenya, where a university campus was rocked by a shooting. Government officials say the death toll has risen to 147. The attack was carried out by militants identified as belonging to the Somali Islamist group Al-Shabaab. Police and soldiers surrounded Garissa University College in northeastern Kenya and exchanged gunfire throughout the day with the attackers, who burst onto the campus in the morning hours. They also, at one point, took hostages. Authorities say all 4 gunmen have been killed. Nearly 600 students were rescued or escaped, 79 of them injured. The government has identified the mastermind behind the attack to be a high-ranking Al-Shabaab official named Mohammed Kuno. And now to the updates on the ongoing criminal probe on last week's Germanwings crash. Prosecutors in Germany say they found records of web searches on suicide and cockpit doors on a tablet computer belonging to co-pilot Andreas Lubitz. Take a listen.
According to the results, the user informed himself about medical treatments, as well as different kinds of, and the implementation of a suicide. On at least one day, he had searched for several minutes about cockpit doors and their safety precautions.
Investigators believe the 27-year-old had used the device between March 16th and March 23rd before crashing the passenger plane one day later on March 24th. Based on this evidence, investigators said they believe Lubitz intentionally crashed the plane when he locked the pilot out of the cockpit and took control of the aircraft. Meanwhile, a French prosecutor announced that crews have finally found the second black box, the flight data recorder, adding there was reasonable hope it would provide useful information, though it was found blackened and burnt. A former Chinese security chief will stand trial on charges of corruption. China's top prosecution office said Friday that Zhou Yongkang faces charges of bribery, abuse of power, and the intentional disclosure of state secrets. Prosecutors accused Zhou of taking advantage of his post for benefits and illegally accepting huge amounts of money and property during his political career. Until his retirement in 2012, Zhou was one of China's most powerful men, controlling police forces, spy agencies, and court systems as a member of the country's top decision-making body. So far, Zhou is the highest-profile target in the government crackdown on corruption that began after President Xi Jinping took office in 2013. The date of Zhou's trial has not been announced. France's top appeals court has overturned a previous ruling that approved the extradition of the daughter of Yoo Byung-un, the late owner of the Seoul ferry that sank off Korea's southwest coast in April last year. Officials say Yoo Seom-na's case will now be re-examined by a lower court. Yoo had filed an appeal against the extradition ruling in January, saying she would not get a fair trial in Korea. Korean authorities say Yoo embezzled $45 million from subsidiaries owned by her family, including the ferry operator, the Cheongjin Marine Company. Korean prosecutors believe the alleged embezzlement contributed to safety defects that led to the ferry sinking. If extradited and convicted, the 48-year-old could face up to 45 years behind bars. As printing and scanning technology has advanced, so have crimes related to forging official documents like resident registration cards and diplomas. But a new smartphone app will help people find the fakes. Our Son Jung-in has more.
Members of a criminal gang based in China were arrested in early 2011 on charges of sending forged official documents like ID cards and university diplomas to Korea. These kind of forgeries are a multi-million-dollar business and have been flooding Korea for years. And what makes it all the more problematic is that the fake degrees and documents have become so convincing that there is no clear way of telling if they are fake or not. But hope is on the horizon in the form of a new smartphone application. The app helps users authenticate a document or product in a matter of seconds with just a few taps on their smart device. After scanning a digital ID code that is invisible to the naked eye, the app analyzes the data in a second and sends the result back to the smartphone. Even items purchased from online shopping malls can be verified by scanning the tag on the attached label.
I shop online a lot, but to be honest, I don't know if the products I'm buying are the real deal or not. So this new app helps me see if the stuff I buy is genuine.
Along with the general information about the product, users can access the brand's website for extra details by clicking a link provided by the app.
Unlike existing QR codes or regular barcodes, this code is encrypted and not visible to the human eye, so it makes it impossible to counterfeit or manipulate.
Experts say the so-called Internet of Things that connects smart devices to regular things, including documents, will help prevent forgeries and protect original data in the future. Son Jung-in, ARIRANG News.
Welcome back. I'm Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. After all that rain, it's still gray overhead. However, it's expected to clear up throughout the afternoon, leaving us with partly cloudy skies. Now, the wind is expected to ease up as well, and as the conditions calm down for the mild afternoon, but it won't be as warm as yesterday when temperatures were lingering in the 20s. Now, looking at the weekend forecast, the rain continues starting on Saturday afternoon on Jeju Island and on Jeollado provinces, eventually moving across the country by this evening. Now, it should clear up on Sunday morning. Now, with that in mind, let's have a look at the readings for today. Seoul will peak up to 16 degrees this afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern regions such as Gwangju and Busan will top to 16 and 21 degrees. Moving over to other regions, Jeju Island gets up to 16 again. Dokdo hits 15, while Namkunggan tops to 7 degrees. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that brings us to the end of our newscast. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung in Seoul. Thanks for watching. We'll be back with all of that and more at 6 p.m. Korea time.